What's going on, everybody? I am back. John Stargarian here from the Club and Sub podcast. Guys, if you like the show, drop a like, subscribe. Helps me out, helps Lags out, helps us build the following up a bit more. Today, just going to be chatting Bellator San Diego. I've taped most of the card, so I'll take you guys through it. Have a couple spots, a couple more I'm looking at. Um, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good Bellator card. I mean, especially compared to most of the shit we've been getting from Bellator since PFL acquired them. But this is a good one. Great headliners, Nurmagomedov and Alexander Shabily. But we'll start at the bottom here. First fight of the night, we got Asia Cortez taking on Ashley Thiner. Current price, let me just get odds up here. Thiner's minus 130. Comeback on Cortez is plus 100. What's going on, Jared? Jared, thanks for the early morning breakdown. I actually was planning to do this even earlier, but last night, due to what some would call tremendous levels of both alcohol and idiocy, I smashed my phone. I spent the morning in Verizon trying to get a new one, only to find out that I have to file an insurance claim. So that was cool. But yeah, I'm here. Anyway, Thiner Cortez. This is an interesting fight because there's quite literally zero tape on Asia Cortez. And there's a decent amount on Thiner's amateur career, but neither of these women have a pro fight yet. Thiner's a small favorite here. I honestly would have bet Thiner at the dog price, and I've actually been still considering the current price. It's kind of a weird fight, and I shout out to Pepe in the chat for kind of like pointing it out to me. But like Thiner's tape's pretty good for a woman with zero professional fights. Decent Muay Thai specialist. It seems like she's had like a relatively lengthy combat career prior to moving over to MMA. And she looks pretty good on tape. You know, her takedown D looks okay. Pretty clean striker, good hands, good kicks. And the issue is, though, there's just no tape on Cortez. So the bull case for Cortez here is she was undefeated as an amateur. She does allegedly come from a grappling background. I know she's been training at ATT lately. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is basically her background. But so, and I mean, I guess that's a decent bull case if you're trying to think about a woman with, you know, no professional fights. But you know, the bear case to that is she fought 3 amateur fights, didn't finish anybody there, despite that jiu-jitsu background. She won 1 by unanimous decision, 1 by majority decision, and 1 by split decision. All of those things are kind of concerning. So I've kind of struggled with this because I think there is we obviously have some knowns with Thiner, and I think Thiner, for the level she's fighting at here, is probably pretty good for it. So I think you have to make her a favorite. The question is just really how high, because, you know, you're steering into so much variance and uncertainty. You know, Cortez is at a good gym. She does come from a grappling background. So it's really like you got to put a lot of stock into her having competitive fights with bad fighters as an amateur. I haven't seen those fights. I'm considering betting Thiner. I think she should be minus 150 to minus 170. Just, you know, because obviously at the end of the day, when you're talking about, you know, this level, you can't go much higher than that because of the variance. But I think the certainties on her side are a lot more certain, not to be an idiot, here than they are on the Cortez side. So we will see. Only props coming on domestics for prelims. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. If anybody sees any domestic props, let me know. I'd be interested in that as well. Moving on, though. Second fight of the night, Josh Hokett, Sean Rose. I mean, look, there's not really a lot to say here. Hokett's a huge fave, minus 750 to Rose's plus 525. Comes from a wrestling background. Rose kind of is the generalist and not very good. Something I do think that I've considered playing, and like what I would look towards here, like I wouldn't advocate ever laying minus 750 on a 1-0 fighter. But I do think Hokett's finishing equity is likely being overrated a bit here. You know, it took him 3 rounds to finish Spencer Smith in his first fight. Spencer Smith's a guy who had 1 pro fight and was finished routinely as an amateur. So I kind of am like suspect at how easy Hokit will be able to finish this. I think over 1.5 at plus 105 is really, really generous. And I might roll with that here. But yeah, I mean, Hokit's obviously the side. He should win. I just think, maybe with a wrestler who's obviously fairly green, betting the over 1.5 at plus isn't a bad look. Next up, Bryce Meredith, Josh McAlooley. Meredith's a big favorite here again. It's kind of, I guess I would call this, it's kind of weird because I'm inclined to call it a step up versus the guys Bryce Meredith's been facing. But actually, no, he fought Ty Johnson in his last fight. Prior to that, yeah, McAlooley, he's nothing special. He's fought no one of consequence, but he does have 5 fights. Okay-ish striker. He's really going to be overwhelmed here, though. Bryce Meredith, dude's an absolute stud, sick college wrestler. I don't really, look, Bellator is doing this thing now that they have been doing for the last. Yeah, and that's a good point with respect to the last fight, is that there could be serious striking improvements on the Hokit side. But yeah, with regard to the Meredith fight, Meredith's a stud wrestler. I don't think McAlooley's the type of guy who's going to be able to sprawl and brawl or even get up off takedowns. Bellator's been doing this thing for the last 2 years where they're bringing in American wrestlers, trying to develop them, and mostly bringing them along slow, which honestly is probably pretty intelligent, especially if any of these guys start to learn jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I have no interest here. I think Meredith's going to smash him fairly easily. Moving on, Masayu Kukuri taking on Herman Tirado. Weird fight here. Herman Tirado's had a very strange career. He's 34 years old. He literally has beaten nothing but bums, except he did beat Joao Zeffirino in PFL way back in the day. I think it was like potentially the first year they had PFL. I was at PFL Daytona. He won a split that decision there. And like Joao Zeffirino is a pretty good fighter, he's not, that's a pretty impressive win. He fought Magomed Karadov, fought Jake Shields, went to a decision with Muhammad Burkamov. Tirado, he's not very good, but he's tough. And I think I don't want to say he's got skills anywhere, but he isn't like a huge liability anywhere. Kikiri, very, very dangerous striker, Japanese. I believe he's Japanese. Let me check. Yeah, he is Japanese. Very dangerous striker. Came over from Pancrase, which really is a pretty awful regional scene. And so I don't really know how much stock to put into Kikiri and what I've seen. He is a lot more dynamic than Tirado. He's faster. He hits harder. Obviously, big hardware edge. Obviously, he is also, 5 years younger than Tirado. He's been very active versus Tirado, who I believe prior to his last fight hadn't fought in like 5 years. So I'm not really sure. I couldn't really figure out what's going on with that and why Tirado hasn't been fighting. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to get there to a Tirado bet, just because it doesn't seem like he is taking MMA too seriously. He is kind of old. But it does feel like a big line for a guy in Kikiri who's coming off from Pancrase and hasn't really been tested. I don't think, if Kikiri's not hurting him on the feet a bunch, I think it probably could play like reasonably close. But with that said, I'll probably pass just because I think the gap in finishing upside is pretty big here and favors Kikiri. He's also younger, obviously improving. So I'm okay passing it. Moving on, this is a really good fight here. We got Jordan Newman. He's taking on Imam Shafi Aliyev. Current price, Aliyev's a decent-sized favorite here, minus 360. New comeback on Newman, plus 285. I know people who like both sides of this fight. I taped it, hoping to like the Newman side. Obviously, I tend to be pretty inclined towards dogs. Jordan Newman, if you don't know, came from a very, very high level D3 wrestling background. You don't really see people, refer to D3 as high level all that often. But this guy was like a multiple time national champion. He's legit, very, very good athlete. He's a sick wrestler, honestly. Problem with Jordan Newman is I still think his jiu-jitsu is a work in progress. Obviously, with only 6 fights under his belt, the striking's a work in progress as well. And it really comes through in the tape. Like he really hasn't fought anybody. I don't even want to say of consequence. Like, he hasn't really fought real fighters yet, and his striking to me just looks absolutely tragic. I think, he's got enough athleticism and raw ability that I think him making a giant improvement fight to fight wouldn't shock me. But it's an interesting fight with Aliyev because I feel like Aliyev is almost like the redheaded stepchild of like that Abdulmanap camp. He's obviously got a lot of the same tools, pretty good wrestler, okay-ish striker. But I think what his best tool is like blending the wrestling with jiu-jitsu, like a lot of those guys, or I shouldn't say like a lot of them do, but like, I've always felt what separated guys like Khabib and Islam from a lot of the other Dagestani wrestlers is they're not just wrestlers. They also can blend it with jiu-jitsu incredibly well. And Aliyev seems to be able to do that okay. He's not obviously nowhere in the same stratosphere as those guys. Like he's many tiers below. I don't really love Aliyev as a fighter, though. He's low volume, very low volume on the feet. He's just looking to set up his takedowns. I do think, he's positionally not bad, but he's not the kind of guy who I'm particularly worried about, locking in a body triangle for 12 minutes or anything like that. But I mean, skill for skill, the fight favors Aliyev like a lot. In the wrestling, I actually think Newman is the better wrestler here by a decent margin. And I really don't think takedowns will come easy for Aliyev, whereas I think Newman could honestly get takedowns in this fight. I'm pretty sure he can, to be honest. The issue I have is I don't know that Newman taking down Aliyev necessarily helps him. Like I feel like when they're actually grappling, there's a decent chance Aliyev can just sweep him and get to a dominant position. I just feel like, Aliyev comes from a great camp, really, really strong pedigree. He knows grappling, like MMA grappling, much more so than Newman does. I expect big improvements from Newman, and I like Pepe talking about his bet on Bronco Busic, who apparently KO'd Ivan Ersland, who's about to fight Young Kutaba, if I'm not mistaken, in the UFC. But yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's a part of me that wants to bet Newman here just because I don't think Aliyev can dominate this fight, wrestling anyway. If Newman's able to keep the fight standing, or I think there's a decent chance Newman will be able to keep it standing. The thing is, I just think Newman's striking it's horrendous. Like this is not a guy who wants to get stuck on the feet. And so I think Newman having to win this fight is going to require him out grappling Aliyev, and I'm very, very skeptical he's capable of doing that. Maybe he's made the improvements. Maybe it turns out Aliyev's cardio when he faces resistance isn't there, but I just think there's a lot. Aliyev's a much more refined fighter than Newman is. I'm very, very bullish on Jordan Newman over the long term. I am not so bullish on him in this spot, though. I mean, I think Aliyev, maybe it's a tad wide, but I think Aliyev minus 300 is probably fine to me. Moving on. Yancy Medeiros, 12-8, the GOAT, taking on Jora Avazan. Weird fight. I mean, I kind of want to bet Yancy just because, he's a huge favorite. The current price here, Avazan is, I don't even know how to say this name. It's minus 400. The comeback on Medeiros is plus 300. And obviously, Medeiros, much more relevant experience, fought just a much higher caliber of opponent, just a more experienced fighter in general. But, Yancy is he's an older guy. He's 37 years old. He just popped for steroids, I believe, in his last fight. In his heyday, Yancy, I mean, he was never the best wrestler. He could grapple you if he had a big edge there, but he's kind of a bit of a weenie, to be honest. Avazan, Jora, I'm just going to call him Jora. We're just going to stick with that here. Jora, pretty good wrestler himself, decent work rate while he's fresh. Okay striker, seems to have like real power yeah, I mean, I would say he has power. I mean, it's funny because like the guy knocked out 6 guys in his first 6 fights, but then he really hasn't knocked out anybody since. But like Yancy at this point just seems shop worn as fuck. So I think he could probably crack Yancy here. But with that said, I do think Yancy's the better striker in this fight. I think the big question in this fight is, can Jora get takedowns in either? I don't think he's going to sub Yancy. That would surprise me. It's going to come down to cardio because I don't think Jora's got great cardio. He has slowed down in just about every fight of his I've seen extended. It's just, will Yancy, when he starts to slow, be able to, one, stop the takedowns or get up at that point? And 2, will he come forward and put out the pace he needs to put out to win this fight? I say that too because I'm also kind of skeptical about where Yancey's cardio is at this point. Him losing to Demir Hadzovic was just brutal, and I know that's a UFC fight, but Hadzovic is like one of the worst to ever do it. Yeah, I don't know. I think if there's live lines being offered for this, maybe you look to bet Yancey live, but Yancey feels like he's at the end, like that it's over for him. Father Time is called. Jorah seems like he's an okay prospect, but I think his cardio is going to limit what he can do. But I mean, he should have a pretty sizable grappling edge, and I think he should be able to probably get 7 to 8 minutes of control here. So probably okay passing that. Moving on, though, we are on the main card now. We got Sumiko Inaba taking on Mackenzie Stiller. Current price, let's see. This has been moving around all week. Inaba minus 158. Comeback on Stiller plus 138. You can find Inaba. You can't find her lower than minus 156. But I like Inaba a lot here. I bet her fairly large in the spot. I took 3.1 units on her at minus 155. Then the line crashed. I added another 1.1 units at minus 110. So I have her to win 3 units. I faded Inaba 2 fights ago with Denise Kielholtz, but like Denise Kielholtz is like a really, really good striker who's fought like all the best women in this division. And it just seemed like crazy in what was likely to be a striking match that Kielholtz was an underdog. I've seen some people say Inaba looked bad in her last fight. I don't know how many people realize that Inaba really, really needed, or not really needed, she needed a round 1 finish to make the playoffs. Her first fight that was scheduled with Katie Taylor-Melendez, I believe, got canceled for the first PFL, and she didn't get a replacement. So she came out in that fight like a house on fire, really emptied the clip in the first round trying to get a finish. Didn't materialize, and she kind of gassed out down the stretch of that fight. But besides that, her gas has always looked pretty good throughout her career. Inaba in general as a prospect, I like a lot. Very well-rounded fighter, very good striker, fast hands, throws combos nice, hits reasonably hard for a woman, decent calf kicks, decent body kicks. Not a bad grappler. I wouldn't say she's the best grappler, but she's very good in the clinch. She can drag. She's good at dragging her opponents down. She's pretty decent from top position. And I've seen, and obviously this is the most important analysis to this fight, I've seen Inaba on bottom, just show really, really good get-ups. And that was back when she was in her second and third professional fights. I'd imagine she's made big improvements since then. And that should pay dividends here against someone like Mackenzie Stiller. Because I don't see it with Mackenzie Stiller. I bet Penko against her. And honestly, Chiara Penko is a terrible grappler. She made 2 to 3 mental mistakes that literally cost her the fight. She dominated the first round. Stiller can't strike at all. She just doesn't have anything on the feet. Penko lit her up, won the first round. Round 2, got head and arm throw. Round 2 first, Penko was owning her again, decided to take her down from the clinch. Eventually, Stiller worked back up. Penko refused to disengage, got head and arm toss, got stuck in a scarf hold for the rest of the round. Round 3, Stiller took Penko down with another head and arm throw. Basically managed to kind of hang out on top. Penko reversed her at one point with a triangle in. Instead of giving it up and getting back up, she decided to commit to it, got stuck on bottom for the rest of the fight. Was tragic, to be honest. But that's really Mackenzie Stiller's game if you watch her. This is a woman, she has no striking at all. She's training at an absolute bum gym. Go look at her Instagram and look at the people she's training with. Look at the drills they're doing. Look at her pad work. It's ugly. And it's played out that way when she's been on the feet in the cage. She is from a high-level judo background, but the only real takedowns I see her hit are these head and arm throws. And it seems like from there, she's just trying to get to an armbar. Like, it reminds me, I said it on Twitter, but it's like budget Ronda Rousey. It's literally Ronda Rousey with less strength, athleticism, who's worse at judo and worse at jiu-jitsu and a lot smaller. Can she come in here, get head and arm throws and control Inaba? I guess, maybe. I think she could get a couple takedowns because Inaba's not afraid to go into the clinch with you. She actually likes fighting in the clinch sometimes. So if she goes in there and Stiller lands a couple of throws, I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be really, really surprised, though, at her controlling Inaba. Inaba has really, really good get-ups, as I mentioned. I don't actually think Stiller's grappling and top control is all that good. So, I just have a hard time seeing it. Maybe she can get an armbar, but Inaba seems fairly schooled in jiu-jitsu. So, it's a possible outcome. I just don't think it's very high percentage. And, on the feet, this is going to be ugly, in my opinion. Inaba is just so much stronger, so much more physical, so much faster. Inaba is a really good striker, and Mackenzie Stiller is not a professional striker. Like, her level is not a professional level of striking. So, yeah, I think Inaba should dominate here. And on top of that, Stiller fought a month ago against a 1-2 opponent. She got this fight 2 weeks ago. I saw someone was telling me on Twitter last night that's not true, but she literally fought last month, and Inaba was booked against Katie Taylor Melendez, and the fight fell through again. So it is very short notice, however else you want to put it. But this is just a giant jumping competition for Stiller here. She's massively outgunned standing. She's massively outgunned in physicality. Maybe she can control Inaba, and I'm wrong, and she's massively improved her top control. But I'd be surprised. I think Inaba should be she should be a good size favorite. I think minus 250-ish range makes sense. Pepe saying parlay Thiner, Inaba, and Yancey and Lima to feed villages. Whoo! That is that would feed villages. I might join you with that. We'll see. Moving on. Speaking of Lima, we got Douglas Lima taking on Aaron Jeffrey. Cool fight here. Current price Jeffrey minus 160. Comeback on Lima plus 140. I shouldn't say I don't know what to make of Douglas Lima. He's kind of a known quantity at this point, but this is only his second fight at 185, and Douglas Lima is one of the most talented strikers in Bellator. Obviously very good calf kicker, decent counter striker, decent power, has pretty good hardware. Lima's got two huge flaws. The first is when he's grounded, when he's flat on his back, he can't get up. We've just seen it over and over at this point. The second is just work rate. He just doesn't put enough offense out there. He won his last fight. I think it was Costello Van Steenis he fought. But yeah, so he beat Costello Van Steenis, but he lost the first round and a half of that fight, basically just on kind of doing nothing. Conversely, you have Aaron Jeffrey, who, I don't know, Jeffrey's a weird fighter. He's a guy, I like betting Aaron Jeffrey when he's fighting grapplers because he is a tremendous counter grappler. He's very good at getting guys stuck in the clinch and just kind of beating them up there. But when Jeffrey's not in the clinch, he is very, very poor at distance. He's just very easy to hit. He just doesn't have a lot to offer in the distance striking department. And on top of which, in his wrestling, it's just really not very good. So you have this fight with Lima, and on the one hand, I think the most likely outcome is Jeffrey's going to outwork Lima here. I think he's going to get him to the clinch. I think he's going to land strikes there. And I just don't really trust Lima to put out enough offense to counteract that. Like, you go back to Jeffrey's last fight with Fabian Edwards. He was having a lot of success. But like Edwards was letting his hands fly when they were in tight, and Edwards was clinch striking back with him. And Lima doesn't really clinch strike much, nor does he really look to turn you all that often in the clinch. And so I kind of think when they're in the clinch, Jeffrey's going to be winning minutes. I have two big questions on this fight. One, how often can Lima keep this in space? And two, when he's in space, will he pull the trigger enough to, make a difference with the judges? I think both those things can happen. I think he's the far more likely of the two to win this fight by finish. I can't picture Jeffrey finishing Douglas, and I can picture Douglas knocking him out. He's obviously got some calf kick equity. But I also know Aaron Jeffrey is going to be relentless. He's not just going to sit back and give Douglas a distance striking fight. So, that's why I lean to the Jeffrey side. Even at the number where it is, I just think, Jeffrey's reliable to go to his game. He does it every fight. And Douglas, I haven't seen a lot of willingness from him throughout his career to evolve or adapt to the opponent he has in front of him. So yeah, I lean Jeffrey. But with that said, I do think it could play out pretty close. And I think, when Douglas does have moments in space, it wouldn't shock me if he hurts Jeffrey here or finishes him. So yeah, the truth is this would be the best win of Aaron Jeffrey's career. So it's like, I can't really lay juice on that. But I do think stylistically it matches up for him fairly well. Co-main event, Lorenz Larkin taking on Levon Chukli. Current price, Chukli, I believe Chukli minus 115. Larkin's minus 115. Come back on Chukli minus 105. I'm considering a Larkin play here. Larkin's 38. He's been around the block, been doing the damn thing for a while. Dude's a real OG of the sport. I love Lorenz Larkin as a fighter. Very, very fast hands, great kicks, ton of power, really durable, really good cardio, has a reasonably high work rate on the feet. The biggest problem with Larkin throughout his entire career has just been he can get grappled a bit. And I don't even think Larkin is a bad grappler per se. What's up, Blum Dog? Good to see you, man. I don't even think Larkin's a bad grappler per se, but it's so hard to explain. It's almost like lackadaisical. Like you watch his fights with Koreshkov, and it's like Koreshkov kind of gets on top of him, but not really. And he's on the fence, but he just shows like no real urgency to get up. And so like when you get on top of him, he'll kind of just give minutes away, waiting for either a stand up or for like the exact perfect moment to get back to his feet. And that's, I mean, it's kind of a concern for me against Chokely because Chokely is going to come out here and look to wrestle him early in this fight. That's what Chokely kind of does. And so if it ends up in a similar situation where Larkin is getting stalled here and just drops minutes in the fight based on Chokely's wrestling, I wouldn't be shocked. Chokely, that is his first base, and that is what he's going to go for. But with that said, I think there's a couple things here. First of all, I don't think Chokely's got very good cardio at all. When this guy's gotten extended, it hasn't looked great. Second of all, I think Chokely is very, very easy to hit, and Larkin is way faster. He's way cleaner on the feet. He hits hard, a lot harder, in my opinion. I think Larkin is very likely over the course of this fight to have a couple big moments at a pretty high clip. Will he KO him? I don't know. I think it's in play, though. Larkin's got a ton of KOs in his career, and I think him knocking Chokely out is in play. I wouldn't say Chokely knocking Larkin out isn't in play. I mean, it could always happen, but I don't put it high percentage at all. Like, very few guys have knocked out Larkin. So, yeah, I mean, I give Larkin a big edge in finishing equity. I give him a lot more chance to have, a big moment, a round swinging moment here than I give Chokely. And I think, yeah, to Pepe's point, Tristan mentioned Larkin was in the top 10 in the UFC when he left. Pepe said that was so long ago in the chat. And it was, a very long time ago. The division was a lot worse, if we're being honest, back then. But, I mean, Larkin's good. Larkin is a very good fighter. He is but I don't know. It's weird because I kind of think Larkin's going to win round 3 here at a decent clip. And I think he's got the moment upside in the finishing equity. I'm just kind of spooked by the possibility of Chokely coming out and grapple fucking him. But I don't know, man. It's a decent step up in competition for Levon Chokely, even at Larkin's age now. I mean, that's the other thing that's kind of scary is Chokely's 27, Larkin's 38 years old. But I mean, like Chokely beat, had an ugly fight with Michael Lombardo, Roman Feraldo. I mean, I know some people like Feraldo, but I mean, the guy's just a power puncher, not much else. Yeah, I don't know. I'm leaning towards betting Larkin in this fight, to be honest. I haven't made a decision definitively yet, but I do think, I mean, he is the much more experienced fighter. He's fought a far higher level of competition, even in very, very recent history. Yeah, I mean, Chokely's a decent prospect, but I think this is an okay fight for the Lorenz. Moving on, the main event, we got Usman Nurmagomedov. He's taking on Alexander Shabily. Current price, Nurmagomedov minus 375. The comeback on Shabily, plus 300. I like Shabily here. I bet a unit and a half on him at plus 350, or plus 325, sorry. And I think this could be a very, very close fight, in my opinion. I would say I taped this pretty deep, and after taping it, I would say the true price of Nurmagomedov is anywhere from like 67% to like 35 or to like 40%. It's a very, very there's a lot of variance in this fight, in my opinion, that's going to determine the line here because I think Alexander Shabily he's the best striker in Bellator, in my opinion. He honestly could be the best striker 155 in the world. Dude's just got crazy fast hands. Bro, Tristan, I didn't bet Newman. I just said I think it could be a competitive fight, but I am betting Shabily though. But Shabily's got really, really fast hands, very good counter striker. I mean, you go back and watch his last fight with Musayev, kind of ended anticlimactically with that body kick, but he had Musayev completely flummoxed in that fight. It was pretty crazy. Like he made him just look like an amateur, really, for most of that fight, and that's what he does to everybody he fights. My biggest issue with Shabily is he's not the he doesn't have the highest work rate. He kind of lets his opponents dictate pace, which obviously is always a dangerous thing to do. And it's especially dangerous in a fight like this with Usman Nurmagomedov, because Nurmagomedov's a guy who wants to kick on the outside. I don't think he's a great boxer at all, but he is very good and similar to Umar at like using kicks to like kind of control range and just point his opponents. And I can see him having success doing that, maybe winning some minutes just via output against Shabily. But I in the aggregate, though, Shabily's striking so high level. Like, I think he's going to find his spots to pick his shots and land on the feet here. Like, I do favor Shabily on the feet outright, personally. Like, I think he's just a much more technical striker than Nurmagomedov is, and I think he's a lot faster. The big question in this fight that'll determine, whether or not Nurmagomedov should be like minus 200 or whether Shabily should be a favorite is the grappling, though. Nurmagomedov, he does like to strike, but you've seen whenever he's gotten himself into any even remotely little trouble, he'll grapple. And that's still his bread and butter, like all those guys. Very, very good wrestler, very good jiu-jitsu. And so it's like, can he get Shabily down? Can he control him? Can he dominate or finish there? Shabily's got very, very good wrestling himself. Very, very good takedown defense. He comes from a pretty strong camp in terms of wrestling. So I don't really think Shabily will be that easy to take down here. But I do think Nurmagomedov can get takedowns. Like, I think if you want to project him to get, 2, 3, even 4 takedowns, it's not unreasonable. The question is, can he control him? And I'd be surprised if he can control him chest to chest. Shabily, he fought Edward Vartanian back in ACB. Vartanian, very good grappler himself, and really couldn't control him at all. I think Shabily will work up there. Biggest question to me is like, I do realize it's a striking Nurmagomedov, small world lifters. I do realize that absolutely. I think Shabily's a better striker, but Usman does wrestle. I think. Do I think Usman's on steroids? I mean, he was. He just failed the steroid test, so maybe he's not anymore, but he definitely was. But yeah, I mean, if Usman's not going to proactively grapple Shabily and he's going to strike with him, I think Shabily's like insane value at this price. Like, I think that should be anywhere from either side, Usman or Shabily, minus 125. But I think Usman will probably wrestle to mix it up here. I just don't think he's going to control Shabily unless he's getting back takes, which could happen. And if he gets to his back, he's going to control him there. I mentioned it earlier, but Usman does blend the jiu-jitsu and wrestling like fairly well together. But yeah, I don't know. When I think about the fight, I'm just like, I have a very hard time imagining Shabily being controlled for like 15 minutes in this fight. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think I could see 3 or 4 takedowns from Usman, maybe 5 to 6 minutes of control over the course of the fight. More than that would surprise me. Now, obviously, if it turns out the grappling is easier than I'm expecting here, Usman, he could be like minus 200, minus 250 here. But even there, like, I think you're getting a decent value on the fight here. Shabily is plus 300 seems crazy to me. Like, I put the line at like Usman 67%, like minus 200, because I think you don't really want to make assumptions about Shabily's grappling and about how he'll respond to the kicking game by just saying definitively he can handle it. So like, I'm comfortable lining Usman minus 200, but that gives you a lot of meat on the bone here. And I think there's a lot of upside on the Shabily side at this price. Like, at this number, like, can Usman Nurmagomedov really be more than minus 375 against Alexander Shabily? I really don't think so. Whereas Shabily theoretically has hindsight favorite upside in this fight. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't know if he'll win or not. Usman's a stud, don't get me wrong. Very, very good fighter. Excellent striker. Really good grappler. But, I mean, I think Shabily's on that level, man. I think Shabily is, like, legitimately elite. So we'll see how it goes. I like Shabily here for 1.5 units. So to recap, I got 1.5 unit Shabily plus 325. I have Inaba to win 3 units. 2 of those are at minus 155 and another one at minus 110. Considering Larkin, considering the over in the Hokit fight. But yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts. GTD main event, Pepe just said. I actually like GTD in the main event a lot. I was actually thinking about that, and it's minus 1. No, it's actually over's getting bet. Oh no, GTD is minus 160. Okay. Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised by Shabily icing Nurmagomedov, and I'd be even more surprised by Nurmagomedov finishing Shabily, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I can see him subbing Shabily, I guess. So, but I couldn't put the main event GTD past like lower than minus 200, I don't think, or minus 185 at the worst. So I don't mind it. So yeah, I actually might even bet that now that Pepe just mentioned it. That's pretty good. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out here tonight. Drop a like, subscribe. FightNumbers.com. Sign up. 30% off your first deposit. Use the promo code CLUB for your first month there. They got bets from Pepe using the chat, bets from Ozzy, bets from Evan. You got the live odds screen. You got John Kelly's DFS projections. Well worth the money, in my opinion. Thanks for coming out, everybody. See you this weekend. Good luck, and I'll be back on Monday for Contender Series. Peace.